I was just looking at my last video that I put out last week, and I recognized the use of profanity in my expression and my enthusiasm and stuff like that. You could probably tell the way I was brought up when I was a young child, because the profanity has stuck with me. I don't know if I got it from a former life or whatever. Yeah, I was raised in a very rough environment, but I don't look back on it in the least degree and wish that I had some other type of upbringing. It was obviously necessary for me to be brought up that way in such a rough environment. But doing so, I was never an evil, bad kid. But as you could probably tell, I was not someone that you wanted to mess with either. I got all my height and strength very early in life. I'm 6'4" and not a small person. And I was 6'4" when I was probably, my gosh, I don't know, 13 years old. Tallest kid in the entire school. So yeah, I was brought up in a rough environment. And so I still use profanity. Maybe it scares people away from me, the way I talk. Or maybe they're put off and thinking this guy can't be spiritual because of his language and stuff like that. But you know what? Maybe that's just a way of diverting people away from the spiritual truth. Maybe it's a way of diverting people that are not dedicated or serious. And on another note, maybe it's a way to attract others that feel left out in the spiritual community because they themselves might feel unworthy. And so maybe their thinking is, well, if this seemingly a low-life degenerate can attain a modicum of spiritual knowledge and advancement, well, maybe it's available to me too. I will tell you that I did not feel deserving of spiritual blessings most of my life, and most likely that was the reason, or no, excuse me, not the reason, that was the result of being brought up thinking that, well, because I am not in a really wonderful spiritual community of people and friends and stuff like that, that I was undeserving of the blessings of God and miracles and all that kind of stuff. That attitude stuck with me for well into my adult life. I actually did not feel worthy of receiving answers to prayers or anything until they actually started to happen, which for me was, maybe I was 25 years old-ish. Now, mind you, I was very spiritual as a 5 or 6 year old. But at the same time, I was in a rough environment, a very rough character, so to say. And I don't want to drone on, but I feel like maybe that's important to bring up. Otherwise, I wouldn't be bringing it up. The point of my topic and the reason I sat down to make this video is I was thinking, you know, why should I make a video today? Maybe I'll put it off till next week or something like that. And I thought, but what if there's a few people that appreciate these videos? What if there are people that really enjoy listening to what I have to say about spirituality? And then if that's the case, then given the miracles and blessings I've received throughout my life, it's somewhat selfish on my part to not take the effort to make a quick video, because in reality, it isn't that difficult for me to do. I've figured out how cameras work and the computer and all that kind of stuff to do these sorts of things. So, and the reason I like to make videos on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday is because those are the 3 days of the week that my wife works outside of the house. And so I take advantage of that and make my videos here. Not that she would mind me making videos in the least degree, but I just figure it's less intrusive and easier for me in an open home without any distractions or anything like that, rather than going to my bedroom or somewhere else to make a video. That's just the way I feel. Anyways, the whole point and purpose of this video was I wanted to talk about enlightenment, as I talk about often. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I keep getting questions from other people. And lots of times, I will not say that I ignore the questions, but really what happens is it's almost as if I do ignore the questions, because I feel like it's so basic. It's like riding a bicycle, and it's like an adult that theoretically grew up riding bicycles is asking me personally, well, how do you ride a bicycle? And if you're going around a corner, do you turn the handlebars or what? And it's like, you can't be serious, can you? Seriously? Can we change the topic to something else? Because this enlightenment thing is so basic and easy to understand. I avoid talking about the actual experience of enlightenment. And I want to insert something right now about experience, because you hear often from so many people. When I say people, I'm talking about gurus. I'm talking about people that are well known throughout the world, and they argue the point. Why do they say it's an experience? Enlightenment is not an experience. Anyone that tells you enlightenment is not an experience, I'm telling you straight up, they're not enlightened, and they don't know their ass from a hole in the ground, because it is an experience. Is it a physical experience? No, but in reality, the actual experience, you can't tell the difference between a physical experience and a spiritual experience. It's all the same until you actually dissect it down to the nth degree, meditate about it and think about it, and you go, well, maybe it's not a physical experience. Okay, well, I don't know what else the hell to call it, because in reality, it is an experience on a spiritual plane that comes to you spiritually and affects everything. When I say affects everything, every sensory of your physical body is affected by enlightenment to such a degree that everything of your physical body that has senses, like your eyes, your ears, your nose, your touch, your awareness, your brain, your mind, your everything that there is that used to function before enlightenment, the way a normal human body functions, after enlightenment, it functions the exact same way, but it's like from a different paradigm point of view. And it affects everything. And I call it an experience. And anyone that says it isn't, seriously, they don't know what they're talking about. Because if they say it's not an experience, they just don't know. You might ask these people that say that, are you regurgitating what you read? Are you regurgitating what you heard from someone? Or is this an actual experiential that you are detecting right now and right here? If you say you're enlightened and you say it's not an experience, then please explain to me how it is not an experience. Because if you can't explain that, then you're not enlightened. You're either delusional or you're lying. So I wanted to talk about enlightenment because other people ask me these things. And I will tell you, I know why they ask. It makes sense because I said a few minutes ago, it's like riding a bicycle. And as adults, I'm fairly certain there's no 6 or 7-year-old kids watching my videos. And if they are, they don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm only speaking to adults. And adults that know how to ride a bicycle. So you will be able to understand what I'm saying to you and how I'm talking to you. So when you learned how to ride a bicycle, almost everyone falls, skins their knees, maybe their parents put training wheels on their bicycle and they ride around that way, and they just think it's the funnest thing in the world, but they're scared to death for the training wheels to come off. If you learned how to ride by your parents putting you on the bicycle and pushing you off, any normal human being is just going to plop over and get hurt, and then they're like, I don't ever want to ride a bicycle ever again. So, and then you fast forward 20 plus years, you don't give it any thought about the process of learning how to ride a bicycle. You just know how to ride a bicycle. And it might have taken you a week. It might have only taken you 2 or 3 days to kind of learn how to ride a bicycle. But we both know that when you're a little child, 1 day seems like a month as an adult. So in reality, as an adult, you look back on that episode, and if you could recall it, which I'm guessing most, if not all of you can't, it probably felt like a month of trying to learn how to ride a bicycle. And then you only learned how to ride rudimentarily, and it probably took years before you really was able to ride a bicycle extremely well and go over jumps and pop wheelies and all the things that are fun to do with the bicycle. So that's what enlightenment is like. A lot of people say, well, enlightenment is just like that. It's just instantaneous. Or they'll say, oh, you're always enlightened. Everyone is always enlightened. See, none of this is true. These people that are telling you this are telling you things they heard, they're telling you things they read. They're certainly not explaining it from the point of view of an enlightened person, because it isn't true. It's a very long and arduous process. And even though it doesn't really come about by way of practice and study, nevertheless, if you don't practice and study, then you're not going to become enlightened. You don't have to practice and study based upon, well, I'm practicing to become enlightened, or I'm studying. You could unawarely be practicing becoming enlightened just by the fact that you're not even a spiritual person. It's possible that a person could become enlightened by just contemplating and meditating and going, wait a second, reality is not making sense to me. Something is off. I don't know what it is, but something is off. And then they read and they study, and they don't even know that they're seeking after enlightenment. They're just not satisfied with the actual explanations of what reality is. And so those people are in the process of studying to become enlightened, and they're not even aware of what they're doing. But if you don't do that, then you're not going to become enlightened. You have to actually be aware enough to accept the idea that there's something not right in this physical reality. Things don't add up. I don't know what it is, but something is not right. And then you go through that process for many years. And in most cases, almost all cases, since there's seriously, I mean, I'm speaking from experience, from everything that I have ever become aware of. And I'm getting close to 72 years old now, that my own personal experience would indicate, of course I'm guessing, of course I'm extrapolating, of course I'm using intuition. I'm not speaking as if I'm God and I know absolutely. But you don't have to be God to absolutely know if you're walking, if in fact you're walking. You can analyze that you're moving and your legs are going back and forth and you're moving along the earth. You can go, God, am I walking? No, that's a stupid question. You can answer that for yourself. You can say, yeah, I'm walking. So at almost 72 years old, I can go, yeah, I'm pretty certain that there's probably less than 10 enlightened people on the planet at this time, with what we're told 7 to 8 billion people are alive on the planet, regardless of how many are on the planet. My guess, best guess, using my acuities, is that there are probably less than 10 enlightened people on the planet at this time. But there's probably 10,000 that either think they're enlightened or say they're enlightened. Maybe 100,000. So just be aware of that. Am I enlightened? Yeah, I'm enlightened. Why would I know I'm enlightened? Well, because the process happened for me. Was I trying to become enlightened? I would say not really, but on the other hand, I wanted to know. I don't know why I'm going this direction with this talk, but I really didn't intend this when I sat down. But on the other hand, I always pray to God before I do make a video to guide and direct me on what I should say and do, and et cetera, et cetera. So who am I to question what direction this is going? But anyways, so for me, did I seek to become enlightened? No, I don't think so. But what did I seek? Well, studying for damn near 50 years, spirituality from the foundation of Christianity only got me so far. Now, when I say only got me so far, mind you, I had already gotten to the point at, how old was I? 40, I would say I was, no, I wasn't 40. I would say I was 51. I would say I was 51 years old when what I define as God enlightenment occurred for me. So, because I was 1 year into my retirement as a professional firefighter. And so that happened for me. So then I spent the next 10 years profoundly studying spirituality and digging ever so deeply into everything I could find about it. But I wasn't seeking enlightenment. And I was done with Christianity. Now, I'm not saying that in a negative connotative way or a derogatory way. I'm just saying after 50 years, or as an aware, cognizant individual, at least 40 years, devoutly from a Christian base, studying everything I could to understand God as best I possibly could. And I had already gained the awareness of God enlightenment as I define it. But it wasn't enough. And why wasn't it enough? Because I started to look into philosophy, which led me to Socrates, Plato, and all the postmodern philosophical writers, et cetera, et cetera. And I went down that path for a couple of years. And then that led me to a little bit into Eastern philosophy. And I say Eastern philosophy because I don't know how else to define it, but it's essentially the root of Hinduism that branches out into Buddhism and every other ism, but it's all derived from the ancient Hindu teachings. And so I knew that they had something and it was different than Christianity. And I felt like at 52 years old or whatever, I felt like, okay, no, actually, yeah, I was 52 years old, I guess, is when I started to look into, there's got to be something more than what I'm missing, and I can't get it, I can't find it. I have exhausted every source that I know of for Christian-based philosophy knowledge, and then the ancient Greeks in their philosophy And still there was something missing, and I didn't know what it was. And so then I went after Eastern philosophy. And I would spend days upon days searching for something. There's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest bookstore in the world, called Powell's Books in downtown Portland, Oregon. Like a 4-story building. Millions and millions upon millions of books in that place. So I would go to the spiritual sections, and eventually I was led to reading about different books that were written about different gurus throughout the years. And so I started looking into that, and that led me to Buddha type, the Vedas and the sutras and all these sorts of things. And I started devouring those one after another, those books, and studying. And this went on for probably 10 years. And then I would start, and I would, boy, would I go out on the limb. It was scary for me for the very first time, to find a guru that had a meeting with people, and they're almost always very small groups in their Sangha meetings and stuff like that. And I would go to those, and boy, oh boy, is that fish out of water for me, because when I say they, literally all of these groups, they certainly frown upon Christianity. Not that they're derogatory against it, but they don't take them seriously. And so it was a very uncomfortable situation for me. But I was out there because I didn't know how to get anything else. At this time, 10 years had passed, and I've already devoured every book I could find anywhere on spirituality that had any substance to it. And I was finding some of the most rare books that are out of print and everything under the sun. And still it wasn't enough. And so I thought, I guess I'm going to have to go find information directly from a guru. And then I found a couple gurus, one in Portland and one in Las Vegas, Nevada at the time. And started to meet with them occasionally, because I traveled all through the states, driving around and stuff like that. And it was several years after that I had what I would call the experience of enlightenment. So, how do you correlate that with riding a bicycle? Well, I could look back on it and think, oh, how do I relate to people that talk to me right now today about enlightenment? Well, I normally react with, why are they asking such a simple question? Enlightenment is easy. This is it. I could tell you in one sentence what enlightenment is. Why do you not understand it? But that's like talking about riding a bicycle, because I forgot how difficult it was to learn how to ride a bicycle. And so it's second nature. And enlightenment is the same thing. I forgot how difficult it was to achieve enlightenment. But I wasn't seeking after enlightenment. I was just seeking for more knowledge, for more spiritual understanding. It's like, what is it that they have that is so appealing to so many billions of people on the planet and throughout the millennia? What is it that they have? Well, enlightenment was just a word, and to me it was like, okay, big deal. What, I don't, until it happened for me. So when it happened, again, trying to communicate with you, I degrade the difficulty of it, and I still go, well, it's not that difficult to understand. What's your problem and everything? And yet, as I stop and think about it, and the reason I'm responding to you on this particular video is, who knows how many will benefit from the story I'm telling. I'm only telling you this because people ask these questions. And so now I get back on thinking of my own personal life. So I became enlightened. Was it a simple, easy thing? Well, did it happen like that? Well, yeah, it did happen like that. But that's like saying riding a bicycle happened like that. Did it happen like that? Yeah. At one moment, you couldn't ride a bicycle, and in the next moment, you could ride a bicycle. So it happened like that. But it might have taken a week or a month to learn how to ride the bicycle. But the actual instantaneous moment from not being able to ride and ride was like that. So enlightenment is the same thing. Yeah, it took me a decade of struggling, trying to find out what reality is, but the actual event that took place was like that. And from that moment on, how did it affect me? As I said, every process of the human body in its ability to sense reality was altered. And when I say altered, it's because your paradigm shift of reality changes everything. It is the analogy of that story of the coiled rope in a dimly lit environment on a boat. Appears to be a coiled snake and you're afraid of it. Well, you're using every sensory of your body to sense what that is. Your experience tells you it's a snake. But your experience also knows ropes exist. So you're aware of both, and every possible thing, your eyes, your sensories, your ears, everything you're using tells you that's a snake. And then the light comes up and it starts to get lighter, and then you look at it and you're no longer paralyzed, scared that you're going to die. You look at it and go, oh, it's a rope. So one moment like that, you're unaware of what reality is, and in like that, you're aware it's a rope. That instantaneous. And yet it took an hour for the light to get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter, and then in an instant, at one point, boom, it's a rope. So that is the same analogy of enlightenment. Every sensory of your human body, your eyes, your ears, Jesus talked about this. He said, if you have eyes to see, if you have ears to hear, all of these things, he's talking about using these sensories of your physical body to sense a reality that is not normally apparent. But from an enlightened point of view, the snake turns into a rope instantly. But an enlightened person sees everything differently. No longer is confused about what they're looking at, or what they're sensing, or what they're feeling, or what reality is, or what... They're no longer confused about anything, because they know what everything is. They know what everything is. They know what everything represents. They know what every action, what every... I hesitate to say they're like God because... But in a way they are like God. Because you're no longer confused about reality. And it happens in an instant. And the reason I say it's an experience is because what else do you have? What else do you have? If you take away experience, if you take away your sight, your hearing, your touch, your smell, every sensory of the physical body, to where you can't experience anything, even take the brain and anesthetize it or something, what are you left with? You have a vegetable there that can't experience anything. So to say it's not an experience is absolutely denying the truth of what it is. It is an overlaying experience of experience. If you say everything here is experience, everything that you can possibly sense, this is experience. If you come over that experience with something that affects all of this, that's an experience too, but it alters the experience of all experiences. Now, does that to say, people say, well, then is that the end of all suffering? Not only no, but hell no. Why? Because you personally have to end the suffering. The instantaneous process of becoming enlightened doesn't end or stop suffering. But suffering is seen differently from an enlightened point of view. For instance, right now, you probably can't tell, but I'm thinking in my mind, well, I got to wrap this video up because my frickin' shoulder is killing me so fucking bad right now. It's just unbelievable pain right here. And why is the pain right here? Because it radiates from my neck, because I have degenerated spine issues and I take pain meds 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there's nothing I can do about it. I take all kinds of stuff to cut inflammation and everything, and to ease the pain and everything. But am I suffering? No. Is this physical body suffering? Yeah. But I don't associate myself with this physical body. So, it's just like I have to endure it somehow. So that's what I'm talking about. I love you. I'll talk to you later. Bye.